Hello, everybody. It's so good to be here. Hopefully you can see my screen. Lovely to be here. This is a webinar that is talking about the data trends for 2023. I am very excited to be here. Basically, what we've found is that we're into an interesting year. We are coming out of a pandemic, as you know, but what we're also seeing is that the world is not just going back to normal. It's not just returning to the days before the pandemic. Other events are happening. We've had a bank fail this week, over in Silicon Valley. We've got war over in Ukraine. We've had some storms here, some cyclones affecting New Zealand in the last month. Last year, there were storms and flooding over in Queensland. All of these things we're finding impacting our customers and how data is working in those spaces. What we find and what we're finding is that people are doing their BAU data programs, delivering streams of data to their organizations, but then are needing to adapt to when these events happen. And they're going to continue to happen. Climate change is a real thing. Political and financial issues are still impacting the world. And so what we're finding is organizations are needing to be better prepared to adapt their data program to meet the needs of the world, of their organization, in the world that their market is working in. So some of the things we've seen and that I'm talking to you today about data governance and being practically able to put data governance there so you can continue to do your BAU work, but also being able to adapt and adjust to the market and to the needs of issues and things that events that happen. Being able to put processes in so that your self-service, which used to and originally was a tool delivered, let's give everyone Power BI, for example, give them a bit of training, and let's assume that they can deliver, is now changing to let's make sure that the tool, and we've got some processes around that, to deliver people an application that allows them to do analytics in a way that can self-serve their particular function in an organization. And a functional process is the key. Then it's around really focusing on your consumers. What we're seeing as a big trend is actually focusing on your customers, because organizations are trying to attract new customers and trying to find new market share into this changing market. The changes that have happened in the world over the last few years and this year mean that your organization often finds it being impacted and needing to really be able to stabilize with new customers and really being able to find new opportunities out there. So being able to be more consumer focused with your data is really important at the moment and is a key trend. And then we're finding the trends in the type of analytics organizations are trying. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how data in your innovation cycle is important as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I am Alex. That's a horrendous picture that Samantha put in this picture. But then I look at myself in the video chat feed and it doesn't seem to be much better. I'm sorry, everybody, for this. But I'm doing this brown bag today. Thank you very much for joining. We will have time at the end for questions and answers, etc. But we'll just go through the slides and see what you think. I've been around for quite a while. I've been in the data space since '99. I've gone across multiple industries. I love to talk and share my stories and experiences, which like I'm doing today. So in terms of data governance, it's really the key part is the practical side of things. Data governance is something that organizations have really been struggling even now to do. And what's happening is even the organizations have tackled data governance historically, are finding it tricky to have that data governance be adaptable to the needs of a changing market. And so what we're finding is it's really key to really drive in what your terms of reference for your governance groups are. The key to it is really driving in what are the foundations of our data program? What is our core tenets of building this foundation? How are we going to identify opportunities for us to really support the business growing and making sure they've got a stabilizing force in the market? And then how do we make our program sticky? How are we going to help on the change management to make sure people in our organization, our users, our stakeholders, our executive, are really getting the best out of data? And then what we've got to do is hand on heart, really be clear around what the challenges are in stopping us being successful, and monitoring and measuring those things to make sure we are overcoming those challenges. We spend time with organizations working through these 4 core areas that really allow your governance group to practically be able to roll out a good governance model that is able to do your BAU streams of delivering the core data outcomes that your program of work really required when you budgeted and forecast that, but then also be adaptable by any changes, i.e. a flood that happened at the back of a cyclone, for example. With all of these 4, what we really find is important to measure these. That comes on the back of having KPIs for each one of these 4 areas that allows you to be able to measure what is important and how are we successful in measuring our foundations, in measuring if we're capturing opportunities, measuring if we are getting sticky, if the organization is actually using our data in the right way, and are we overcoming the challenges that are in front of us. These are the key. What we've found is recently it's important to start these KPIs after you've identified by manually putting them into place, creating the KPIs, then manually updating them. I know it sounds like a pain, but what we've found is if we automated these KPIs to start with, different governance groups actually will operate in different ways once you get the real people into those seats and actually doing it. So manually giving them these KPIs that they can use, engage, and then identify how you're going in these areas, and then having them drive which ones they find important is then important to be able to say which ones should we then automate. You don't want to go down the road of automating all of these and then only finding a small percentage are used, or that they need a different version or a different KPI altogether to practically do governance. So this is a key area of actually putting them in manually first and then automating it afterwards. We also have found over the last several years that as the program of work has been happening and as organizations have got better at delivering data outcomes, conversely, especially because we went with a tool-first approach often in the market around delivering self-service, the business is coming with a lot more requests to the centralized data team, more than was often expected when they started off. We were hoping as an industry that self-service would mean that they would be able to solve their own questions, but it's actually raised more questions in a way. And the BAU central data team is often having more questions coming into them and finding it harder to get the time to be able to deliver new data streams of work. So what we're finding is having a portal that is that in between, that really is practically supporting the wider organization and business in the role that they have, to have a place to go to answer those questions, to do their processes, to log new requests, to find out who the good people are, to get access to training that they particularly need for their role, to see what the list of reports are, is a great way of siphoning off the questions from the data team to this other place and freeing up the capacity to be able to deliver good work. In terms of the self-service, as I talked about, it has historically been much more tool focused. Let's give them something like Power BI. Let's assume that they can use it with a bit of training and then go for it. It hasn't had the impact in embedding and making it sticky with organizations as we'd hoped for. What's important is, first off, to be able to prioritize things. Those business people who've been given power to use some data, they need to be able to have a very agile way to be able to prioritize things. This is especially so what we've seen now after COVID, including the things like the war in Ukraine and the storms and climate change and financial impacts, is being able to take these things, then reprioritize your work amongst your BAU platform stuff, and be able to have a simple process like this of being able to come with, well, this impact's happening, we need to get some data and what the value of that's going to be compared to how easy or low it's going to be, and be able to reprioritize impactful things that are happening with your BAU pieces, and be able to have a way of reprioritizing your overall structures is an important way in your self-service and your overall way of delivering data to your business. It's also important that operating model of having your BI team, or your centralized data team, however you'd call them, being there to deliver still your core regulatory data that needs to be certain level, and your wider business group that is the self-service, that you've tried to self-service enable, and then have that center of excellence. We used to call that more of a power user. It used to be more of a group of people who had the technical skills to be able to do it. But now they need to be also the people who know where the processes are and how to go about communicating to the wider business and their departments, supporting them, not just from a technical, I can build that report, but I can help you get the most out of the data and leverage that, and some of the processes about capturing requirements, building the right data set asset for them to do that particular type of use case of that data. Another change has been taking it from assuming all users as the same type of users, giving them a tool like Power BI, giving them the same training and letting them go, to identifying that different people have different roles in an organization. When you have a business that's really around, we need to do things, we need to make business decisions, we need actionable insight from our data. We need data that allows us to take action and be able to measure against it. You then have decision makers who might say, look, we've had the flood on the back of the hurricane. What I want to see is explore something with that. I want to see if there's a new way we can take advantage of this, or we can reduce our impact of that. You then pass that on to someone who then be able to define and see if you can measure it, what there is, how you can measure what they're trying to achieve from that. Often historically more of a BA type role. Then you have people who actually are gathering that data together and processing and putting into a place that you can do that next step, which is analyzing that data, building reports and analytics, machine learning outcomes, and then passing that to the decision makers so they can see that, consume it, and make action, create tactics that will support that, and then identify the new areas to go. The faster this is, the more actions you're able to have, the more successful you are at adapting and growing your business. What we find is, if you look at this as your model for delivering outcomes, you can then see where you have slower areas. Is it in gathering the data? Is it in the analyzing? Is it actually in identifying new ideas and actually being innovative? Or is it around how do we create tactics? Knowing where you are slower in this allows you to then put proactive tactics in place to speed that up, to get this working faster for your organization and make you more agile. In terms of also going to a tool-first approach and moving away from that, from the way you look at your users, what we found is that it's important to realize that different users have different needs for how they'll use a tool like Power BI. So you might have users who are really at these lower levels of need. They might just need to open reports, review, see what's in there, and make a decision based on something that someone's already put together, ready for them in a well told set of data. They might need to open that up and then make it a little bit, tweak the visuals a little bit so that it tells a particular flavor of story that they've got for them when they go into a meeting. That might be a slightly different level of need. Then you might move up and have some needs of being able to build some reports against their own data set in Excel, for example, that they might have for a one-off type use. Moving up to a need where they may be using data within and then publishing it with your own particular business unit where people already understand that type of data. Up to needs where they might share it across people, across an organization, across their departments, across the organization, and be able to need to give context to that. And then complexity up to more dashboards and organizational dashboards that drill down into more curated data sets. These all have different needs of how to support those actions. And particular users will then be able to say, this is the level that I need to get up to. And what we're seeing is organizations this year are really focused on, let's give people the skills to be able to do the need that they need to, the level that they need to get to. Those bottom two are really more around the decision makers, and these other roles that need data and analyzing and publishing and creating complex analytics are really at these higher levels of reporting. In terms then of the consumer focused change in giving data, that's in the change of market. That's really needing to understand your customers better so that you can then change the way you're working with them and try and appeal to them, cement your customers, your existing customers, and expand your services to the wider base of prospects. So, for example, one of the universities out there, they used to not be as interested in if students would leave. They were really around their energy was appealing to new students. Their customers were students. That changed through COVID. Through COVID, we weren't getting new students from international areas as much, or at all, of course. And that meant that they were really then focused on, let's make sure we keep the students that we've already got. They were less focused. Their focus changed from bringing in new ones to retaining the students. And so that meant that they needed to understand the student behavior and actions, their customers, in a whole different way from what they were. For them, they didn't have that ability. They didn't take roles. They didn't have attendance records. So for them, they didn't actually have that understanding. So what we helped them do was we helped them focus on routers across the university. If a student went near a classroom that they were timetabled with half an hour either side of the timetabled class, they'd connect to that route, their device would connect to that router. We could see that they were near the classroom. We took that as a proxy for attendance. We brought in other information, and that allowed them to be able to predict within 4 weeks of the year with 94% accuracy if a student was going to pass or fail that year. In fact, we were also able to predict what level of grade they were likely to get. That led them to understand their students really at a much better granular level and be able to change the tactics that supported them being able to work with those and retain those customers. That really allowed them to change the tactics and the way they approach the market. Another example of this is a fast food chain. I'm hungry, it's lunchtime. And for them, they had the ability to get data at a store level, at a weekly level. That allowed them to do sort of reviews at a cross-store comparison level, but not much more granular than that. For them, we helped them with a modern data platform to be able to go, let's look at our consumers better. For them, in near real time, they broke the data down to a daily, actually for an hourly basis. That meant that they were able to understand what consumers at a particular hour of the day were really focused on buying. And what they found, for example, was in some areas of commercial real estate, that between 11 and 12, people were going out and buying a single burger rather than a combo. They were actually buying a single pre-lunch snack rather than waiting for lunch, which they'd get later on in the day. And so what they were able to do is realize that having the default of a combo all day was not the best use of that. They were not focusing that on giving the best outcomes to their consumers. They then changed it so that between 11 and 12, the default options was a single burger rather than a combo. It really appealed to their customers and made the insert in stores and made them change the way they were servicing their customers based on the data that allowed them to really be able to support successful customer eating in that case. And then what we're really seeing is this year is a change in the way that organizations are helping their data teams. Data teams historically, 5 years ago, for example, we had a lot of organizations who had very skilled, well-rounded data practitioners internally who were able to get the best out of their data. Over the last few years, what we've had is a change in the way that that market looks a little bit for a lot of organizations. What they've had is they've had newer people coming in from university with different skills. They've got a lot of Python skills. They've got a lot of API development skills. They've got quite different skill sets, and they don't have quite the same holistic understanding of how to deliver value from their data. And so that's had an impact on how the data team operates, in fact, in functionally giving value out of the data platforms. What we've seen is that is an actual problem in the market, not so much in the actual people. The people are fully excited and interesting, and they've got they're really excited to and passionate about data. They just don't quite have that well-rounded skills. One of the things that we're trying to do, and we're seeing an appetite in the market for this, is helping round out those people's your data team's skills by actually, in this case, we've got a 10-day program, bit of selfless plug there, shameless plug. Key for that is actually the mentoring aspect. It's not just the training, it's around the applying and mentoring the people who come onto it to practically apply those skills to their actual business problem back at your organization. For us, it's around putting those into bite-sized blocks around all the technical skills, things like data storytelling, data engineering, governance, architecture, and machine learning, as well as some of the soft skills about engaging the business and actually being able to communicate data, getting data requirements, presenting information to them, all of those key things that actually holistically makes them a better, well-rounded data practitioner. We do have some dates for that training coming up. I'll send you that afterwards and you'll get the recording of this. If you're interested, reach out. We would love to have some of your team onto the program. Some of it, we're breaking it down. You can even sign up for a particular 2-day slice. Anyway, in terms of your roadmap and your analytics journey, where's that machine learning type space going? Where are those things happening? What's happening in there? What we've seen is that really at the core of it is still the same base 4 quadrants. We have data. There's still that core set of known data. We've still got ERP systems and the CRM systems and your financial systems, which all capture that key core data still. There is still a growing amount of unknown or less known data that's coming through. A lot more of that, a lot more video feeds and a lot more Excel files that people have been storing that are surfacing up as now needing to be consumed. And there's still a lot of questions. Those known things, what are our monthly sales last month, etc. Those things are happening, but there is a lot more unknown exploratory stuff, especially as reactionary to things like global climate change events or wars in Ukraine or financial issues like banks closing, etc., or COVID, etc. Decreased governance there's more governance on those regulatory important stable of your business type reportings, and then less around that exploratory stuff. A cyclone hits the country, you don't want to have to go through a whole level of governance and structures and process to get data ready for it. You want to be able to get in and dive into data to see what you can find, see what the impacts were. That descriptive stuff is really still there, that stuff about having that core of tenets of your business, being able to measure the success of sales over time, be able to understand how many customer complaints you're getting, how your operations are going, be able to measure those over time and make sure you're going okay. That stuff is, business intelligence is still there, absolutely. There is a growing amount of discovery analytics going. It's been there, organizations have been doing, but there's much more of a focus, especially now, on that. Where we had a cyclone come through, for example, there is a event that happens. Let's look at the rest of our data, break off of things to see if there's correlations in other parts of our business in the data to see what the impacts are, positive and negative, to see what the effects of some of these things. What are the effects of this big closing in Silicon Valley? Let's look at some of our trends over the next few weeks and do some discovery in here. Let's see if there's some impacts on our business. Let's set our analysts on a path of being able to deep dive into here and see what's happening. That is really important to be able to be agile in the way we use, and we want to store data into your lake house, etc., in a way that allows you to have that, to be able to do that discovery. That's really important stuff in there. And then we get into this more predictive stuff. This is the stuff which machine learning's been better at. This is the stuff around predicting what's going to happen in your business. This is around things like classifying support calls or failure rates. This is, okay, if, for example, we're looking at a cyclone as well and predictive, over the last 10 years when we've had a major weather event, what has been the impact on our assets out in the field or on our customers' buying behaviors, etc. Let's use that to predict how that's going to happen this time round so that we can be able to be more proactive in the way we service our customers in advance. That's all important. If you see something like a storm happening next week, you do a bit of predictive to say what's going to happen so we can be prepared for it rather than react to it. And then that prescriptive analytics is becoming more important. That is because prescriptive is really around being able to do things like maintenance and be able to time things like downtimes on your operations or when you're going to be doing some IT maintenance so that it has the least impact onto your business, on your operations. We need to do maintenance on our machines, but we want to make sure we're doing it at a time that's going to impact our customers and our operations the least so that we are still efficient as a business and we're still going to make money. So that is the prescriptive side of things. And that is much more lying into organizations' roadmap as a practical use case that they are trying to tackle. Organizations have really started to mature in this space. That KPI metrics of some years ago, still being delivered by organizations. It's still a core tenet, but a lot of work has gone into the pattern side of things, that discovery side, really spending more time by analysts this year, in the last couple of years, on spending time to discover what's happening in there, really trying to be more proactive of trying to figure out how we as an organization can get out there and just get our customers excited, attract new customers and cement our place in the market. And that predictive modeling to try and predict what's going to happen so you can be on the front foot in the market is becoming even more important, we're finding from our customers, as we're getting more and more events sort of affecting our markets, even down here in New Zealand and Australia. And then that prescriptive is really starting to get on the roadmap more. And as we've seen, that maturity of that is starting to lay out for organizations. And then lastly, today we're going to talk about the R&D process. what we're finding with organizations is they are wanting to spend more time focusing on innovation. There used to be some effort was in that space, but now as the markets have been changing over the last few years, and as things are unfolding, organizations are wanting to spend more time being innovative to be on the front foot of offering new solutions to their customers, finding new market share. Innovation is a key part of doing that, and data is a core element of going, let's find out where we can be successful in doing that. Okay, what have we got to do that? When we look at it, and when organizations are starting to use data to try and do that, what you've got to do is understand the three core tenets to be able to then find that core in the middle, which is your actual safe space, the key to innovating. First is desirability. The university example I talked about before, there was that problem of students leaving. It's always been a problem of students, maybe indulging in a few beverages and missing classes during the year, and then over time failing their courses. It became a desirable problem for them once international students weren't coming in to fill those seats. So that was always a problem, but it was the desire of solving it wasn't there as much until we went into a pandemic, and one of the core groups of customers stopped being a customer base. Suddenly that desirability changed. Then validate the idea as feasible. That's where we often are coming into the play for customers. Do you actually have the data, and is it in a place, and is it of a decent enough quality, and do you have enough governance around it to actually be able to use that data to innovate off? And if not, how do we do that? And then is this an actual idea that if we take it to the market, if we're using it to offer our customers something that's going to either attract or encourage them to extend their service with us, is that going to give us the benefits that we actually want? Is that actually going to generate a profit, or is it just a nice to have? For us, what we are seeing, especially over the last few years, as you can see on Facebook, for example, people have different levels of how much they are wanting to be supported by some of these things. As you can see, for something like that Chat GPT, the new chat machine AI out there, people are either excited and keen to use it. Some people are sort of more tolerant about it, but feel a little bit discomfort around it, how it's going to be used. Some are concerned about how their data is going to be used, and some are completely anxious about it. In fact, so anxious that they've called it uncomfortable in this. That was not me. I copied this from a reliable source. The uncomfortable. That's how anxious they are. They couldn't spell it. So what's important for you, often we find, is you understanding your customers, to understand where they are in this sort of space around how it's not just offering them a solution. It's not just innovating to give them something that you think is going to give them value, but what's the likelihood that they'll feel comfortable in using that? That's important. And then what we find is another powerful way of being involved in here is actually doing customer surveys, actually going out there, opening up for free text for them to be able to put in how do they find your services, how are they engaging with you, and then capturing that in an ongoing way where you're able to surface some of these up into word maps that allow you to have some input from your customers in an easy fashion into the innovation process on your data, to be able to surface this up and be able to interrogate it and say, where are the opportunities? Right, so that is my session for today on data trends for 2023. If you've got any questions, chuck them into the Q&A, yeah, and I'm happy to answer any. If you jump off, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful to have this opportunity to talk to you all. Let me just go have a look at the chat. No chat there. Any questions? No questions. All right. Well, thank you very much. For those that have joined, even those that signed up, we've recorded this session. My good friend Samantha Swain is going to edit it into something nice, reasonable. She might put some animations, but hopefully she'll do something to fix this, and we'll then send you a version of the recording for you to be able to look at and share in your organization at your leisure. If you've got any questions, please reach out to me or anyone else at Altus if you're keen to ask some direct questions about how this might be important for your particular organization. Thank you so much for your time, and yeah, have a lovely day.